assessment of taking. Uzbekistan reforms its ratings for practical cooperation with international partners and for the exchange of experience in the region. We are confident that the initiative will serve as an effective tool for achieving tangible results in the conservation of migratory species. Thank you for your attention.
Say, Rahmat, thank you very much. That's about the extent of the language I learned when I was in Uzbekistan, but it's a beautiful expression. Um, I just want to pick up on the one point you made, and it's very important, which is because we're talking about migratory species, although we're talking about looking at domestic motivations, we're talking about for species that are migratory. So what that means is we need to look at the levels of taking that are going on, not just in one country, but across the range. And that's why it's so critical, because if one country is doing a nice conservation work on a species, and yet that species crosses the border and there's illegal or unsustainable levels of take, obviously it's in the self-interest of the country taking the responsible measures to make sure their neighbors are also. And we are doing a lot of interesting work, for example, on illegal killing of birds. We already have 3 programs on that around the world as an example of what CMS is doing successfully to tackle these issues. Okay, so I'm now going to turn to a dear colleague and friend from the Convention on Biological Diversity, Secretariat, Mariano Castro Jimenez, to talk about this initiative and the Kunming Montreal Biodiversity Framework. Over to you.
Thank you very much for having us here. Is it better? Yes. Thank you so much for having us here. We have been hearing recently about how collaboration at international level has been hindered and how things seem to be difficult. But I also think that in recent days, and particularly during different events here, we have also been seeing how multilateralism is still the avenue to face the global challenges that we have, the triple planetary crisis. Just before this event, we participated on an event on partnerships for ecological connectivity. So I think this is quite inspiring to keep working on the things we believe in. And if you had a chance to participate in the last CITES COP in Uzbekistan, if you heard the plenary yesterday, and if you're going to be in Yerevan for the CBD COP, you're also going to be seeing how cooperation is at the heart of the agenda items of our conventions. So it's particularly encouraging to see concrete collaboration between the sister conventions and see how we can keep building and working together. And this initiative comes in a really timely and practical time for all of us, particularly from CVD's perspective. We have just received the 7 national reports, most of them, a big number of them, which is something to be proud of. And we're currently analyzing how are we currently doing in achieving the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. This is going to be an essential part of the COP that is going to be taking place in Yerevan in October. And parties are going to be discussing how are we moving forward, what areas still need to do more work. And precisely initiatives like this one that are able to address some of the drivers of biodiversity that have not been given enough attention come in a perfect moment in which parties are needing to bring all these ideas from the global spectrum into national implementation. As you know, this initiative is particularly relevant for the framework itself, but especially for targets 4, 5, and 9. While I still haven't seen all the national reports about these targets, I can tell you that at least the national targets, in most of them, they did address these targets. There was a lot of attention on harvest, on sustainable use. There was a bit of less attention on implementation measures. So again, these kind of initiatives are contributing to how countries are going to be implementing the framework. Something that we have also run into is that usually countries They're very clear on how the framework looks like. They know how the monitoring framework also looks like, but they usually have questions. Okay, so you have this global initiative. How do we? I am from Costa Rica, so in Costa Rica they will use a phrase that is, how do we tropicalize this, right? How do we bring this home? How do we implement something that has been negotiated from 195 parties? And precisely this kind of collaboration and cooperation is what helps to address these main questions. I spoke about the targets, I spoke about the monitoring framework, the different partnerships that we have. CMS, together with other conventions, international organizations, we're part of the collective partnership on sustainable wildlife management. At the partnership, we're currently working on a guidance that includes many of the items that are going to be also addressed through the GTI. So again, we're very happy to contribute and be part of this great initiative, and look forward to keep continuing working together with all of you.
Thank you so much, Mariano. And I just want to underscore again that Target 5 of the Kunming-Montreal Biodiversity Framework sets a target of ensuring that any take of species is legal, sustainable, and safe. And so to do that, we need to address, again, all the different kinds of pressures. So that includes some of the trade issues that CITES deals with, these issues of taking that CMS is dealing with, as well as others. So thank you for mentioning that, and it's been great to partner with CBD on the sustainable wildlife work that you have for your COP. Okay, so now I'm going to turn to our first non-governmental entity and conservation group, which is Sue Lieberman, who is speaking on behalf of the Wildlife Conservation Society. I think many of you know her, and is going to talk about stories from the field, the evidence and urgency of this global taking initiative. Over to you, Sue.
I am patience I don't do, but it's not going on. Is this on? Yeah. Yes, I'm so patient. Yes, it does work occasionally. Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me. I really appreciate it. I'm going to have some brief remarks and one story from the field. WCS, as most of you know, works in the wild, in the field. We work in about 60 countries around the world. So I'm not going to give you 60 stories, I promise. But when asking all of the countries where we work, is illegal or unsustainable take of wildlife a threat? And the answer is yes. It's a threat everywhere. It's a major issue, and it's about domestic take, but occasionally there's international trade. And I want to really appreciate the mention of CBD Target 5, which I was going to mention, which is not only about international trade at all. And if we don't tackle this issue of illegal and unsustainable domestic take of wildlife, we will not deliver on Target 5, because it's not only about international trade at all. We work with a lot of governments on their national biodiversity strategies and actions plans. Much more needs to be done on implementing that target and on implementing the domestic take. I won't give you a lot of examples of unsustainable or illegal take. First of all of you in the room know all about this. It was mentioned earlier by Amy, but we think about local consumption of wild meat. It's both aquatic, such as manta rays, devil rays, dolphins. It's also terrestrial, from turtles to ungulates to birds. Sometimes that is for consumption, basic consumption, and sometimes it's a luxury food item. There are other uses, whether they're religious, spiritual, magical, sport, pet trade, etc. There are multiple uses, but the issue is, when is this take illegal and when is it unsustainable? Sometimes it's unsustainable but not illegal. So we have to look at both elements. And it may not be illegal because it's a violation of CITES, but it may be illegal because it's a violation of domestic law and domestic management and subnational law, for example. And the initiative, I won't read out everything in the initiative. I was honored to co-chair the working group of the Scientific Council. If you haven't yet read the document, I mean, I'm sure you all have. I should never assume that. But if you haven't had a chance to read it fully, please read it, because there are 5 core work areas and 4 cross-cutting recommendations. This is an exciting initiative. It's about strengthening national frameworks, building enforcement capacity, engaging indigenous peoples, local communities, and investing in awareness and education. This is not about telling people you shouldn't eat wildlife. It's about education, awareness, when is it appropriate, when is it sustainable, and I would add, when it is safe from a health perspective. So I was supposed to give stories from the field. Works to improve the conservation and sustainable use of wildlife in forest and savanna ecosystems, working directly with indigenous peoples, local communities, and to reduce the zoonotic risk associated with the use, particularly for people who are accessing wildlife in the wild. There is, depending on which species, FAO, CIRAD, the French Agricultural Research Center, and C4 and WCS works in 16 countries, but with governments and local officials, local individuals, local communities. What's really interesting from a field perspective, and I think directly relevant to the CMS initiative, it works, I spoke with our program in the Republic of Congo, which works on wild meat, bush in 3 levels. At the urban level, we work with chefs because it's popular. People want to have a taste from their village. They're living in the city, they don't want chicken, they want something exotic. So we're working with chefs on a program to say you can have 1 minute, okay, I'll talk faster. You can have traditional Congolese food, but it doesn't have to be wildlife. We're working in villages with people to help them have alternative sources of protein, reducing consumption of wildlife, looking at species, etc., but finding alternative protein, not just saying you're bad, you're eating wild meat. And then in forest communities that depend on wild meat, we're working to ensure their health, to ensure sustainability, and to ensure their safety. And I mentioned this program. It's an outstanding field-based model, in my opinion, but it is something that could really be scaled up. Yes, it's not only migratory species, but it could be scaled up, and the model could be utilized as part of the GTI. And I note there are multiple CMS decisions and initiatives that could not come under this initiative. What's important is to understand the problem, to have the science, the local knowledge, work with local communities. And what's particularly important is WCS is really excited to see this initiative take off and see how we can work together with all of you, with partners and other partners, to make it a reality for migratory species. Sorry I ran over. I get excited. Thank you very much.
No, thank you so much, Sue, and great examples. And one thing that your remarks made me think about is when you look at people who truly need to rely on wild meat for subsistence, and they rely on it and they manage it in a sustainable way, but then you have other pressures on the same species or on other species that are important for local communities that is not sustainable. This is also a major issue. It's a major issue for ensuring that the people that actually need this can rely on it, as opposed to it being sold, let's say, for because it's a fad or it's a luxury for people that don't actually rely on it for being able to survive. Coming from North America, I did some work in the Arctic, and so that's a very key example of where unsustainable pressures and unsustainable use and other pressures can actually really be very much of concern for the local indigenous people who actually need to rely on these species. So I'm now very happy to turn to Melanie Heath from Traffic, and I have to say that Traffic was definitely an early adopter of this initiative. I mean, we've had many conversations over the last few years about this idea, and I think what would be interesting also, Melanie, is to explain why is this relevant to Traffic, since we're talking about species that might have sail inside a country and taking, which of course any taking has to start with a taking in somewhere. So that taking is going to happen in a country. It might be internationally traded, might be not. So we're very interested to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Amy. And it's an absolute pleasure to join the panel today and this launch of a really important new initiative, as has been outlined. Is that better? You hear me? So just, I mean, maybe just to go back a little, I mean, in terms of Traffic's engagement, as you say, Amy, from the outset, we're extremely supportive of this new initiative and are very pleased to have contributed to the working group that was dedicated to helping to shape this and the underlying scoping analysis. Our mission as Traffic is really focusing on ensuring that trading wild species is legal and sustainable for the benefit of planet and people. And this speaks directly to the two key targets under the CBD, Kunming Montreal Biodiversity Framework. I think this represents a really timely step for migratory species conservation, really providing a complement to action that's being undertaken by CITES and other initiatives around international wild species trade. So just to unpack a little bit about the trade, the market, the demand around species. Firstly, really to effectively address illegal and unsustainable take, we really must understand those true scale and dynamics. And as you say, Amy, that really links through to domestic take, through to international trade. There's a real need to pinpoint those interventions where we can have greatest leverage. And in some cases, that might be in the source country or the source of the species. It might be in transit, or it might be in retail and consumption. And to have lasting impact really depends on that understanding of where take is happening. Importantly, what are the key motivations? How is it evolving? Who's actually benefiting? What are the key pressure points? And importantly, how can this shift systems and incentives so that behaviours change sustainably over time? And in order to do this, we need to really take a whole trade chain approach, and that really includes working across several disciplines, across conservation science, across enforcement intelligence, importantly behavioural science and market systems, and really bridging that gap between data and decision making. So really building up that understanding, I think, utilises so much experience and expertise and will be central to this new initiative around collecting and analysing data, conducting market surveys, social research, increasing trade being on online platforms and having a better understanding of how that works, mapping those supply chains from source to consumer and identifying new and emerging routes and trends, as well as shifts in demand. But really importantly to understand the reason why, the motivations, and I think as already has been said by other speakers, recognising these can be extremely varied and very local in their orientation. And needing to therefore develop behavioural science tools that can be employed along that trade chain to really look at those behaviours. And maybe just to sort of bring this to life a little bit by a couple of examples that Traffic has been engaged in around this demand and changing behaviours and motivation piece. We've been working with BirdLife, colleague on the panel here, to explore motivations for the overexploitation and illegal take of migratory birds. We've been working with the Nigeria Conservation Foundation to understand better the domestic drivers for the spiritual use of vulture parts and products amongst some communities, and also work around northeastern Tanzania on the wild meat trade. Importantly, I just wanted to also emphasise a plethora of sort of guidance and documentation that exists really related to this initiative, which I hope can be brought into and can help implement as this develops further. Traffic's been involved in developing guidance documents for CITES parties and those implementing GEF projects, really looking at how to bring behaviour change approaches into projects and programmes. And indeed, there was a meeting in Bogota, Colombia, on CITES guidance on this topic last week. So just to close, really to emphasise the really important opportunity this initiative brings to really transform the systems. It's about enforcement, but it's also about transforming those systems and behaviours that really can enable and sustain legal trade. So just to close, Traffic stands ready to support CMS and the parties, of course, and really look forward to further collaboration and support so that this initiative can help drive sustainable long-term conservation impact. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Melanie, and we look forward to continuing this collaboration. I'm now going to ask our last speaker, who is speaking on behalf of BirdLife International, another big partner of ours, Eileen Stenzel, about what works, scaling success stories through this new initiative.
Thank you very much, Amy. We're delighted to be here, and I hope I can bring some conservation optimism to the room, because we're not starting from scratch. So they're good examples across the CMS family that we can build upon. But we know the situation is really grave. It's urgent. So Melanie, from Traffic has already referred to the review that you've got tabled here on the impact take and trade of migratory birds for consumption in Africa, Eurasia, funded by Switzerland, and it illustrates just how sustainable this pressure has become. 2/3 of CMS-listed land birds are affected, and most of them are already in decline. And when we look to oceans, we've already by Germany, and that also, illustrates the severity of the situation in the ocean. So we're really, off target here, which is why we're so grateful, Amy, that we are really driving and pushing forward this new initiative. So the good news is, let me pick two case studies, one for legal take, one for illegal take, of how, we've solved this problem before in the CMS family together. So one that's very close to my heart, for those of you that know me longer, is the Saiga antelope. It's a fabulous success story, as I'm sure, Uzbekistan, as one of the range states, would agree. It's, back in the day when I started my PhD in 2003 on the species, we were at rock bottom, critically endangered. No other mammal on the planet had plumbed like that, 95% crash in 10 years, catastrophic. And this species is now, we're above 3 million, and they've been downlisted to near threatened. And, the CMS MOU that's been in place since 2006 has really brought all the stakeholders, all the range states, NGOs to the table to tackle take, because Saigas crashed because of poaching for the horn, but domestically also the meat is used. So it's really, it's both, domestic, you've got to fix it, and internationally. And I'm really delighted that ACBK, our BirdLife partner in Kazakhstan, won the Earthshot Prize, recognizing also their role in this, and other species, sociable letwing, for example, the whole steppe ecosystem benefits. Now, taking another example of a legal, a species that is legally hunted, is the tiger bean goose. So it's been declining, in around 2009, we realized there's a drastic decline. And we knew, there's a legal hunt, but it required more management. So under the African Eurasian Waterbird Agreement, in response, under the European Goose Management Platform, they set up reduced quotas for some parties, as well as a moratorium for some other parties, and really working hand in hand with the hunting community, sort of really looking each other, in the eye, setting up adaptive hunting management. And I'm not saying it's easy, it took,
getting together, looking at the data, put a lot of effort in. But I think these two examples, I would have more if I had more time, but both the Saiga and the tiger being goose should inspire us that if we work hard and if we're really committed, we can nail this. We can tackle take. So I think on that positive note, that should inspire us to push this initiative. Let's talk more.
Thank you very much, Eileen. I also want to point out, what's interesting about the examples you gave is that when you look at, why is a species listed under CMS? It's because either it's endangered and it might therefore go onto Appendix 1 and have a prohibition on taking, or it would benefit from international cooperation. But generally it means that its conservation status is not good. So it's not surprising when we looked at the science reports that the status of these species was not good. And what we're really interested in is the trends, though. And when we look at these success stories, I think what they point out is that CMS has to be ready to also respond to the need for sustainable wildlife management. It's not just about prohibition of taking. We have to be ready to support countries in this. And I think the Saiga is a great example where actually we had a team that went and met with Kazakhstan, in fact, and worked with them and experts and conservation managers on a plan for how do they start to do taking in a way that is sustainable, community consultation. So we're starting to do that with CMS. And I think the other example on the goose management is under our agreement on the African Eurasian water birds. So they're doing a lot of work on management. So this is something that CMS has not done as much of, but hopefully if our efforts are successful, then this is the direction we're going to have to strengthen. I also want to point out an important piece of this puzzle, which is the GEF. So something that we've worked hard on is to also ensure that the GEF funding plan from GEF 8 and now GEF 9 would address these issues. And in fact, I was very proud to see that GEF 8, it used to have a pilot project on international trade of wildlife. They expanded that to include all of the things related to CMS's mandate as well. So it's in there, it will be continued. This is an integrated program led by the World Bank. So it looks at all of the pressures on species, including taking for trade internationally and domestically, human-wildlife conflict, and connectivity. So it's a really they can provide some integration, is what I'm saying, for countries that would like to use their resources for wildlife conservation. Mariano also mentioned that we are also working through the Cooperative Partnership on Wildlife. This is something that started under CBD. And so there's a lot of people, partners that are not here at the CMS COP or at the table that are going to be contributing to this initiative. We've already put this as one of the parts of the work plan, and those include pretty diverse partners, including CIFOR, the Center for International Forest Research, as well as FAO, as well as the CIC, which is an International Hunters Association, because we need their help to get the data and look at the measures that are already being taken that we can build on. So we're going to have to close in a few minutes. I did want to open it up to see if there's any pressing comments or questions, and then I think we'll maybe have a nice group photo and close. So any comments or questions from the floor? Maybe we could take one or two. Patience, please. Zimbabwe.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Am I audible? Okay, thank you very much. Just a quick one to say at the last CBD COP16, parties adopted a decision to develop sustainable wildlife management global guidelines. I just wanted to find out if there's any plug-ins of this initiative in terms of contribution or also collaboration and contributing to that ongoing work.
Thank you, Patience, and also thank you for all your inputs as you participated on the expert meeting to draft those guidance. Precisely under this collaborative partnership on sustainable wildlife management, we have been coordinating together. You may recall that the COP decision requested the CBD Secretariat to work in coordination and collaboration with CITES Secretariat, CMS Secretariat, and the CPW. So of course, this is something that we're looking together, and the documents that are gonna be discussed in SUBSTA by the end of July are of course gonna be developed by all of us.
I see Ian from Born Free.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to ask you if the initiative on looking at the taking of migratory species is considering more than just the numerical reduction of the population that taking infers, because whatever an animal does, if it would live for several decades longer, that role in the ecosystem has been removed. So if you have an elephant that, say, produces a ton of dung every week, and you kill that elephant, then for the next 20, 30 years, that nutrient cycling, that seed dispersal is not happening. So I hope that the initiative will not just look at the numerical reduction in numbers when an animal is taken from a population, but the impact on the survivors of the population and on the ecosystem, because we have to optimize every ecosystem to provide the services that we need to live. Thank you.
No, thanks very much, Ian. Absolutely, and I think your question also points out that this isn't a cookie cutter approach. I mean, this is going to depend on, as I said before, the countries, the regions, the pressures, the types of species, and their role in the environment. So very, very good point. Maybe any last point, last chance to ask a question or make a comment? Okay. Well, if not, then I also want to point out again, this is work that is also ongoing, under CMS. This mandate is called for, the initiative is called for under the agenda item. It says, actually from COP15, that CMS Secretariat should develop a mandate to address this issue. So that's, I keep saying that, a mandate. We should develop an initiative to address this mandate coming out of COP14, in addition to this other work that we need to do. And so one of the key areas of work, in fact, that the CPW will help us with, is that body of knowledge of what's happening on the ground. It's a very ambitious mandate we have from the COP. We started work on it. There is this report that Sue mentioned. It's already online, so you can look at that. But there's a lot more work to be done. So again, if you're working in this area, if you're interested in this topic, I really encourage you to get involved, whether it's just by reading the materials. Tanya, please reach out to Tanya if you're interested in learning more about the partnership and how you can participate or support it. And I'd love to invite, as Ideen is here, we take a photo maybe from the E and B. I don't know if they're here, but let's get a good photo of this group. And I want to just celebrate this final formal launch of this amazing initiative. So thank you all very much for being here.